Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Time to Gab, where we talk about God, giggles, and lots of gabbing. So, today I want to talk about one of the most basic tenets of Christianity, the Ten Commandments. So, today we'll focus on the first commandment, which I'm sure most of you know. Yesterday, when I was thinking about this video, I was thinking about what it would be like to actually live during the time of Moses when some dude literally came down from a mountain with two stone tablets saying, like, hey, God gave me these rules for you guys to follow. I think I would freak out. Like, I would just be like, oh man, I got a lot to do for sure. And nowadays, I think it's something that we learn when we're really young, and then maybe we revisit every time we're going to confession or we're really, evaluating our lives. But especially the first commandment can be so easy to glaze over. So the first commandment goes like this from Exodus: I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. So if you read this at face value, you're like, cool, I'm not worshiping golden calves like the folks were back then. So, done, check. You kind of don't really sit and think about it. But I think it's one of the easiest ones to actually violate without maybe actively trying, right? Like stealing, you stole. It's pretty obvious. This one, I think, has a lot to unpack and a lot to offer us, honestly, in our lives. And before I keep going, I did mention the golden calf. I'm linking a video from Father Mike Schmitz, who's a really awesome priest who explains why Catholics don't worship saints. Even though we have statues, we have relics, right? That's not actually worshiping any of those objects or saints, and he really unpacks that well in his video, so I'll link that below, as well as another video where he talks about making God a priority. So, why should we care about this commandment? Just to begin with, because nothing will satisfy us except God. We can't even love others well unless we love God first. Because any sort of love that we provide to someone else, if God's not providing us, it isn't feeding our souls, then we're going to be expecting something from others. We're going to desire something from people who can't give us something. We're always going to be disappointed in human relationships, in any endeavors that we take. We're going to wish we were more satisfied with that. And that can end up having, creating really ugly relationships where we desire something from someone and they can't give it to us, and we end up being bitter and not, loving them. Or, if you have some sort of big goal in your life, you try so hard for your goal, but at the end you just still don't feel satisfied. You don't feel fulfilled because you prioritized that thing over God. Only God can satisfy our hearts in that way. I mean, we were created by Him and through Him, and He's the only one who can really fill our hearts and satisfy us. So really, we can't live a balanced life at all without God. Nothing makes sense. Like, nothing makes sense. And we can't love others. We can't love ourselves even properly if we don't love God first. So that's kind of why we should even care, why this is actually a huge deal, right? I mean, think about it. God put the 10 commandments there, and He was like, all right, guys, if you don't read any of the other commandments, make sure you read this one. It's the very first one sentence. Like, this is the most important thing. This is the base of our faith of Christianity, is loving God before everything else. So we know that nothing will satisfy. Only God can satisfy, and we don't want to be a slave to anything else, right? We don't want to expect to be satisfied by anything that won't, right? And that's how you do become enslaved to the world. So we definitely have to prioritize God in everything. And what does that like actually mean? Because okay, like love God before all things. It's like, yeah, think about God during the day, and I haven't stabbed anyone, so we're good, right? And like, what does that practically mean? And Father Mike Schmitz gave a super cool explanation, saying that reflect on your time, your money, and your consumption. So time, does your time look like somebody who loves God? Like, do you dedicate time and effort to things of God? Like, I mean, at the very basic, right? Like, Do you go to church? Are you going to mass on Sunday? Do you give that 1 hour to God? Do you give time, an actual time to pray? Right? Like, is that a real priority? And Father Mike Schmitz puts it really well that you can only have one priority. Like, the thing that is prior to everything else is your priority. So, it might not have to be the first thing you do in the day, but is it the most important thing you do in the day? That no matter what, before eating, like breathing, really, like, are you prioritizing that time with God? And then your money. Secondly, does your spending look like the spending of a Christian? So that can be anything from, yes, donating money, giving alms. It's really important. Jesus emphasizes prayer, almsgiving, and fasting, right? But also, just in general, are you spending money on things that aren't godly? Lately, that's actually, for me, meaning that trying to look kind of at what's sustainable, like what's sustainable, sorry guys, for our planet, like what actually, brings goodness to the world through my purchases. So I've become a lot more aware of that. Definitely haven't, perfected it, but it's something I recently thought about. It's a way I could glorify God through my money, right? Through my spending. And then the third one is consumption. And Father Mike Schmitz really pins this to media. Like, what are you intaking? What are you consuming in your life and your soul? Do those things reflect God? Or, if somebody looked at your consumption, would they say, this isn't a person of God? So I thought that was really cool because he really drilled down into actionable things that you can look at to see if you're fulfilling the first commandment. And I want to take a second to also talk about fulfilling the first commandment when it's most difficult, which is during our suffering. So in suffering, there are also 3 things that we tend to do. So the first is blame God. So I'm suffering and I'm upset. And you've seen these people. They're bitter people who are angry and hurt, and they blame God, they blame others, they blame everything. Sometimes they even blame themselves to such a really tough degree. The second thing you can do in suffering is run. So whether that be ignore your problems, ignore them so much that you just exacerbate them over and over. There's so many ways you can run from your problems, from your suffering. And then the third is that you can medicate. So medicate means anything from, honestly, alcohol, drugs, stress eating. I think stress sleeping, it's a mix of running and medicating, I think. The smallest of things, chewing your nails when you're suffering. Like, when your anxiety is kicking in, like, what are the things that you're depending on rather than God? You're really trusting that more than trusting God. So in those moments, I urge you to say a small prayer. Take the most simple prayer you know. It can be, Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, help me. Like, be honest. Just like, help me. I need help in suffering. And you can really live out the first commandment also. So again, look at your time, your money, and your consumption. And in suffering, always turn back to God. Always say a small prayer, redirect your spirit, and move forward. I'm so happy that you all joined me today, and I'm so excited to get to heaven with all of you. Bye.